Hello and welcome back to Tear Us Apart. A lot's happened since the last time you joined us here on Spotify, with both clubs seeing big results in Europe for contrasting reasons and in the Premier League. There's also been a bit of action in the transfer market since then, which we will touch upon with a look to some future other transfers before the window shuts next week, and a look ahead to a big week for Manchester City as they take on Club Brugge in the Champions League and Arsenal in the Premier League, while United also take on FCSB in the Europa League and Crystal Palace at Old Trafford in the Premier League. So a lot of stuff to touch upon. So let's get straight into it. We'll start. I know, Dana, you had quite an experience watching United against Rangers in the Europa League last week. Quite a dramatic game and a late win for United in the Europa League. How so? That's back-to-back wins after the Fulham game as well. Another late-ish win. How are you seeing things right now?
I mean, the performances in those past two games haven't been very good, I would say. I don't think they've been anywhere near the standard that Ruben Amorim expects his Manchester United team to be at, as we know. And I know there's a certain expectation from Ineos that he has to work with these players until probably it looks like now the summer, unless we have a certain left wing back coming in this January transfer window. So he is working with players that aren't his players, which everyone knows, but he has to get the most out of those players, and that's the most challenging part at the moment. And against Rangers and Fulham, there were times where United just lacked a lot of creativity going forwards, and they're getting a little bit better on the defensive part now, although there are still numerous amounts of inklings to show that United still aren't fully there yet. But I think that the grinding out these two past results and previous results under Amorim just shows that they're not going to get relegated, but also that they can progress further on this season and hopefully get into the top eight, because I think now United are around 8 points off, which seems quite a lot, but they will be looking at the table, and if various results do happen, it will go in their favour. But I won't say very too pleased at the moment, but yeah, they're doing the best that they can at the moment, it seems, the players, and Amarin especially.
Yeah, Ethan, if we go back to before the Southampton game, United hadn't won in six, and this dismal run of form was quite concerning for United fans, and it was grabbing the headlines, the poor form. That's three wins in four now. Are you seeing signs of improvement on the pitch, or do you still think there's a lot of work to do? Do you think Europe, even European football, top seven finish, do you think that's out of the question? Do you think a cup run's out of the question?
Um, European football would be some achievement at this point, I think. That's kind of crazy to say, but the teams above United in those European spots are just better. There is no two ways about it. At the start of the season, people went, "Oh, United are probably should be a lot higher than where they are." You know, XG went against them, that sort of thing, all that sort of thing. And that was probably something that had a part to play in it, because United did struggle for goals, which they probably should have scored goals. I remember that West Ham game where Ten Hag got sacked, Diogo Dalot missing an open goal, that sort of thing. But I'm not one. I'm not going to be one to jump ahead, because I said it on this podcast weeks before when the Liverpool and Arsenal games happened. The big game would be how we played against Southampton. And granted, we won that game, but we were absolutely terrible for the first 70 odd minutes, and it was just a clear indicator that we hadn't really made any progress. Likewise, then we played Brighton, we always lose to, and they outplayed us. And then Rangers, that is a good win, to be fair. And I thought United played quite well. It was well compared to what they have done. But I'm not. I feel like it'd be naive to say they've made leaps and strides in any way, shape, or form, because Fulham was really dross to watch. And no, I think United sit that low in the table for a reason. I think a cup run is the only thing that they can really salvage this season. And even, yeah, say you bring in Dorgu, but who's to say he's going to be good enough to start straight away? He's coming from a foreign league. He's very young. Like, he probably won't be starting. So we're not getting anyone that's going to go into the first team straight away and make a massive change. So yeah, I think it's looking bleak, and I'm not going to read into those two wins too much.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll come on to United's future transfer business later in the episode, but we'll go to City and the past events that have happened in the last couple of weeks. There's that defeat at PSG in the Champions League where City raced into a two-goal lead at the start of the second half, only to throw it away in quite embarrassing fashion. Before then, a massive, massive win against Chelsea at the weekend in the Premier League, where City actually, for the first time in a while, you could actually say, well, apart from games against Ipswich and other small teams like that, City actually turned up and played really well and put in a good performance. And the new signings also impressed with Omar Marmoush taking some plaudits for a promising debut. Abdulkadir Kusanov, of course, had the unfortunate error just minutes into his City debut, but I thought he responded really well, showed a great character to respond after that mistake and put in a really solid performance otherwise. Um, so I suppose the hopes have picked up a little bit at City after that win. New blood and I say players coming back from injury. There's not every time a player comes back, another one drops at the moment, but there's certainly a reason to be positive right now. Dan, it's a big week for City, a really tough run coming up. You got that massive decisive Champions League game against Bruges in midweek, then Arsenal at the Emirates at the weekend, FA Cup coming up, and then further tough league games against the likes of Newcastle and Liverpool. How do you see City faring over the next few weeks? Because I think based off City's season, it seems a bit unpredictable what kind of City team you're going to get. But is this upturn in fortune something to read into?
Possibly. Obviously, the new signings will help. For me, it seems like a bit of a new manager bounce, but new player bounce. When Mamouche came on or started, I felt like the whole of the City team just looked completely different. There was a lot more energy in that midfield
There's a
going
bit of buzz in the
forwards.
air, wasn't there, really?
Yeah, and for a player to actually get the ball, run forwards, and look like they're going in on goal and going to score, which I'm, the most important thing is confidently as well, which I've not seen from City. That was sort of a major factor as well. Obviously, Kuznov at the back, like you said, he made that error. That'll come with time. He's still only young. Club Brugge is going to be a massive game. I think I underplayed it a little bit this past week, saying that why is everyone kicking up a fuss about it? But you can, if you look at the table, you can clearly see why. And that loss to PSG obviously didn't help. Then against Arsenal on Sunday, this fixture hasn't got as much riding on it as it has previous seasons. I would say in the previous 2 or 3 seasons, due to how well Liverpool are doing, where Arsenal and City are in the league, and it's obviously going to be a big game when Sunday does come. But you've got to question yourself, and you mentioned it before we came on, Adam. City could go 1, 2, 3 up, but against Arsenal, especially away from home, anything could happen. And I feel like that game against Leyton Orient, is it Leyton Orient or Derby? Leyton Orient.
Leyton Orient, yeah.
That's going to be a big sort of rest game for all of the players for that weekend because they've got a couple of big fixtures coming up. And most people predicted that City would go on a run from January onwards in 2025 and push Liverpool possibly. And you can even see online now Liverpool fans are getting a little bit unsettled at the fact that City are starting to come back slowly. I think they're 9 points behind, I think now.
I think it's more than that. I think it's 12.
Is it 11? 12 or 11?
Oh, maybe 11, yeah.
So that adds to it as well. So it is a critical point in City's season at the moment. And the main thing is for Pep and his team, they just have to keep winning and winning and winning because if you want to get silverware this season, that's the only way that it's going to happen.
They're
Yeah.
12 with a game in hand, for reference.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
massive.
Liverpool, I think we've caused them some trauma over the years, so that's only the reason why. Like I'd say, been long out of the title race. That's not an issue.
Newcastle blew something like a 10 to 12 point lead, and United caught them up and won the league. So it is possible. Like these things can happen.
Yeah,
True, but
we need Liverpool to lose like 5 games, and they've dropped points like 6 times this season in the Prem, something off 7 times. So it's not
it's
happening.
not like it's a consistent City side either.
No.
Midweek
I
shows
can't.
that.
This team's not capable of pulling off a run of form like that. It's just different circumstances now. But I do think that win was really encouraging. I think, like you say, we're having the new signings there brought a buzz in the air with the crowd, and I think it motivated the players a bit on the pitch as well. I think one of the more important things in that game was the players were playing for each other more than they perhaps have done in recent weeks. Bernardo Silva was probably the best we've seen him this season. He kept dropping deep to help Kusanov out when he was on the ball because a guy who doesn't speak the language and he's 20 years old, he's got like 30 senior top division appearances under his belt. He's going to need that helping hand when he's coming into his debut in a foreign country, no less the Premier League against Chelsea as well. Gundogan as well thought he was probably the best we've seen him this season. So I think it helped elevate the team's level overall, and the way the City team seemed to be enjoying themselves in that second half, like the celebrations with Haaland and Foden, they seem happy on the pitch right there, and Edison's long passing proving to be a weapon again. He got his second assist this season, which is quite something for a goalkeeper. But yeah, if City can keep that up, then that's obviously very good going forward. But I'm not sure I see it right now. As for United in the transfer market, we mentioned Dorgu there, the Lecce left wing back. That Ethan, have you got any latest updates on that from your
Well,
sources?
United. Oh yeah. I think United are most likely to go through with the deal. They'll sort of bid what Lecce want in the coming days. I mean, it's the 27th of January now, so they haven't got long. But that looks about it for incomings, which, most will say isn't good enough, really, when you're sitting, 12th in the league. Yeah, I don't think that's acceptable. I know PSR and all that, and they came out and said, well, I can't remember where I saw it, that they are close to breaking the rules. So that's, that does factor into it. So yeah, no, I think that he's like the only incoming, but I think it's the outgoings is where it will be the more interesting thing to keep an eye on in the next few days with Rashford and Garnacho.
I was just going to mention quickly one thing you mentioned about PSR and FFP there. The fact that Ineos, they haven't publicly obviously come out, but there's been murmurs about them selling academy talent, possibly going down the route that Villa and Everton have done recently in this past year or so. I think this is quite a dangerous route to go down for Manchester United, just because of how good we know the academy is held into a high esteem, not just in Europe but worldwide. So for them to just off-ship academy talent isn't very a Manchester United thing to do. So it's quite worrying if that does happen, and United are only selling Garnacho to Chelsea just for FFP or PSR reasons. I don't fully believe that it would be, but if there's other talent in the under 21s or 18s, that is quite worrying.
Rashford, right? Like, I understand Rashford selling him because he's had
Yeah.
chance after chance under multiple managers. But Garnacho, I saw someone tweet this. It's like Garnacho's 2021. Like he's a raw talent, but there's a clear like a lot of talent there. And yes, he's not Ronaldo, but when Ronaldo came to United at 19, he was very, very raw. He was like, he didn't have it all together, and it takes a long time to get that. But selling someone to one of your big rivals who's that talented, it just doesn't feel like the United way. And I know, it's maybe silly to cling on to that, but I feel like there's some traditions you just shouldn't really go and move away from. I feel like Garnacho's a player you don't give up on yet. He's got bags of talent. I just
Would you not let him
don't
go to Napoli?
I don't want to see him gone. I don't want to sell him. Like, they already got rid of McTominay, and he's like the poster boy of Serie A now. I publicly expressed how I didn't want him to go, and they did that for PSR. But you splashed 40 million on a 19-year-old left back or something, like, and you're going to sell Garnacho for 50.
This also goes back to the point that we mentioned the other week about City's academy and all of the players that they've sold, not due to PSR or FFP, but have just sold brilliant talent that have gone to do excellent things. We spoke about Morgan Rogers, so it's not just like a Manchester United thing, but when it does become a separate thing is when United start to sell these great products and great players off to other teams, and they do well. Because if Ineos are going out and wanting to buy good talent in Europe that are emerging just before they go to a big club, or a club like Brighton who will put a £80 million, £120 million fee on, like they would have done for Caicedo, I'm pretty sure. Or they did do for Chelsea, obviously. So it's getting those talents in before they start to be known, basically, a bit like Diego Leon, what they've done there. So one of United's principles for that to go, or get anchored out. Yeah, like I say, it's not the best thing to come, and I think that Garnacho to Napoli. I think De Laurentiis has come out and said that he's not fully happy with how Garnacho's goal scoring and assist record is. Um, like he was basically came out and said, "Is he going to get me goals?" And he didn't seem very confident when he came out and said it. So I think that's just creating some murmurs in the background. Um, but like, how many days have we got now left? 4 or 5 days of the window, so you just don't know what could happen. But if United can get Dorgu in, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, Napoli need a Kvaratskhelia replacement after he went to PSG. Whether Garnacho is that man remains to be seen. But we did mention Marcus Rashford there. There's a lot of talk about him leaving this window. Ruben Amorim came out and criticised his training, if I'm not mistaken, the
Yeah.
last few days, saying he'd rather have his goalkeeper coach in training if he gives his all, gives 100%. AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, both linked with him throughout the window. Both deals don't really look anywhere near like happening. Would you be more open to selling Marcus Rashford right now, or do you think he's got a future under Amorim? I'll go to you, Ethan.
Yeah, I'm not happy to see him go because I feel like I've grown up watching him. Like I was sat in my room after school watching him on a Thursday night. Like I've seen him grow from what 18 to 27 now, I think. It's quite sad to see him go, but he has had a chance under what four managers now: Louis van Gaal, Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Rangnick, Ten Hag,
Ten
all that, and
Hag, yeah.
he's not been consistent. He's been on and off, and clearly there's something wrong with him right now that you know that he's getting publicly outed for having attitude issues. So yeah, I'm a lot happier to see him go than Garnacho because I feel like Garnacho has a future at United, whereas I think Rashford has sort of got to a point where maybe he does just need to actually have that getaway, cut ties, leave Manchester. He's been there his whole life. Maybe he just needs a challenge, fresh start, something to prove. Because I feel like I don't know if he has anything to prove to United fans anymore. Even though I feel like he should feel like he does, because he's not shown us that he's a consistent world class player. He's world class spurts of form, but yeah, it will be incredibly sad to go, and I really hope if he is to leave that he gets at least one like appearance at Old Trafford again, so United fans get to like say goodbye to him if it was like a permanent deal. But clearly, right now his attitude isn't good enough, and I back the manager, and yeah, so I wouldn't be too disappointed with him going.
Yeah, it's very strange because if we go back to the very early days of this podcast, we had one of our first real, like, you know, memorable episodes, if you will, would be when we had the team of the season debate and Marcus Rashford, which Dan was all for having Marcus Rashford in there, and rightfully so, on the back of a brilliant season. Fast forward 18 months and he's this close to the exit door, and that's not just because a big team have come in for him to get him, it's because he's not been doing enough on the pitch and clearly not been doing enough off it. So there's always the rumours of PSG. There were always whispers of that, wasn't there, back in the day? Never of any real substance, but it does feel, I do think Ethan's right there in terms of probably is about time for him to go.
But what was interesting actually, I can't remember what ex player. Oh, actually, it was oh um Teddy Sheringham. I can't remember if it was in the last few days. It said Rashford's comments, obviously, when he spoke to Henry Winter. He said if you'd done that under Fergie, you'd have been gone like straight away. Speaking out publicly, saying that you want a new challenge, you just don't do that. I think Amarin's right to sort of discipline him in a way, because you wouldn't get away with it. I mean, Fergie famously fell out with quite a few. I mean, Yap Stam at a petrol station, Roy Keane over things like he wasn't let that slide, and I'm quite glad that Amarim isn't either. But I think clearly he's sort of lost his discipline, which is quite sad for a boy that's grown up at United's academy. He was a very humble lad. He's sort of lost. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot that's happened behind the scenes, and maybe it's not all his fault. Obviously, we don't know. But yeah, it's quite sad to see, and I think it's a good position that Amarin's in. Like the standpoint he's making.
Dan, you were campaigning strongly for Rashford to be in your 2022-23 team of the season, i.e. strongly campaigning for him for his place in the United squad going into the rest of the Premier League season this year.
No, I do think his time's up. I agree with Ethan. I think nothing to discredit what he's done at Manchester United. He has been a key, vital part over the past 8 to 9 to 10 years that he's been at the club. He's been a great servant through these tough times for United. So nothing to discredit for what he's done. He's been there when United have won Europa Leagues, FA Cups in the last minute, even against the biggest rivals as well. So he has been a critical part into this team. But I do think that at the age that he's at now, 27, there is a clear pathway in Europe. Not for young talent, because everyone keeps forgetting that he's not young anymore, but for English talent. And I still call him talent because there is still a good player in there that just needs to be unlocked elsewhere, just not at Manchester United. So you've seen the likes of Ademola Lookman go over, Loftus-Cheek, Tomori, these types of players. They've all done quite well abroad. So, like Ethan said, he just needs a breath of fresh air somewhere else. And the fact that he's basically stopped running for not just the team but the club to a certain extent. When you see some of his performances, I always go back to it. If a player can't run back or track back most of the game, and 250 staff have lost the job because of redundancies and cuts, it's the minimum that you can do is just to track back. So if a
He's on
player's not doing that,
375k as well.
Exactly. So the proof's in the pudding, and I wish him the best of luck wherever he goes. But United do need to change the way that they operate, and that's what they're doing at the moment.
While we're on United, we'll come to the upcoming games. FCSB first in the Europa League, with United's place in the knockouts looking as good as secure. Is there any room for a Rashford appearance there? Do you think Amorim's going to go strong?
I don't think Rashford will feature. I have a feeling that he might not even feature for the rest of the season, because if Amorim's holding this disciplinary action up to such a high ceiling that no player can be above the manager or the head coach as such he is, then he can't realistically feature Rashford in the team or whatever. I would not be surprised if he makes him train and play with the under-21s or the reserves, because it's going back to that thing again. Manchester United have needed discipline for the past couple of years, and this is a standpoint in the current history where this has to happen. So I don't think Rashford will feature. Obviously, FCSB used to be Steaua Bucharest, Champions League winners in 1986. They're a big club, and I've seen the ground. I think 600 I think it's 2,000 United fans are going over. I'm pretty sure over to the stadium in Bucharest. Another great away day ticked off in Romania for the Reds. So yeah, I'm not too sure what team he will field, but I would not be surprised if some players like Kuonki comes in, Collier starts possibly again in the Europa League. Some of these types of players, because United are into the knockout phases now, no matter what. They're either into the round of 32 or round of 16. But if they do get that win, that means that they won't have to play that round of 32 tie and go straight into the round of 16.
It'd be important to note that they are on 14 points in 8th, so they're only a point behind United, so they've done quite well. They've only lost one game.
They did get beat 4-0 by Celtic, though, so that's one thing that I will note.
But
Celtic.
Not Celtic.
Rangers?
Yeah, Rangers. Yeah, sorry, Rangers.
Yeah, but there's you always have a bad game. I mean, we drew with, who was the first game that we drew to? The Dutch side. I can't remember the name. Yeah, and then obviously the Porto game. So I don't think we can be
Porto are good
too much. Yeah, well, somewhat. I mean, they're 25th, so they're not really.
Porto are 25th.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Right. Okay.
Yeah, they're out. They're currently sitting outside of the thing.
They've changed their manager this season, haven't they? Like Sporting.
And Sir Jim Ratcliffe won't be happy with his Nice team sitting second bottom, 35th with 2 points.
This new format,
But yes, what I was trying to say is, I think he'll play quite strong, because I don't remember the last time we ever rotated in the Europa League. I feel like we used to be in the Europa League. The standard gap between the English teams used to be so strong that you could sort of field quite a second string. We used to play loads of youth in the Europa League, whereas the last few years, I don't think we've been able to afford to do that. Ollie was always quite adamant on playing a strongish team in the knock. Well, to be fair, he played youth and then thingy, but Ten Hag always sort of played a strong team, and I think we'll see that today on Thursday, because it's quite a big difference for fitness if we can get straight through, avoiding that extra game, will be quite useful with this new footballing calendar. But one thing I will say, it's just something that occurred to me. I think so. I must have seen it somewhere that United haven't really had many injuries at all since Ten Hag's left, and he got criticised a lot for his dodgy training and his like overloading of players in fitness. And United had constant injuries, and since he's gone, we've not had many at all, which is very interesting. You could say luck, but I feel like there's a lot to say about that because that's
Well,
United just getting on constantly.
that's what Spurs and Ange are finding out at the moment, aren't they? The amount of things that he puts his players through in training, and the amount of sessions that he puts them through, it's so hard and so demanding. The levels that he's trying to match the players with just aren't there, and if they are, it's too much for them. They get
Well,
injured.
clearly, it's not doing much for them, is it?
No, exactly.
So
So, and
yeah,
that's resulted in poor performances. So there is that gap where you can't overtrain your players too much, otherwise they do pick up injuries. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's
got
interesting.
to that. Yeah, it is.
Bit of food for thought, definitely. Um, Fun fact about Stoke Bucharest, that was City's first competitive opponent under Pep Guardiola, Champions League qualifying round, August 2016. We battered them. Nolito starred on his debut. Uh,
Yeah.
but Premier League also coming up at the weekend. Crystal Palace have managed a few impressive results over United in recent seasons. A couple at Old Trafford. I remember Patrick Van Aanholt. I remember Michael Olise's free kick at Selhurst
Mm.
Park when our friend Connor was not a big fan of Val Weghorst um, back in the day, if you remember that.
Oh yes, I
Of
didn't know
course.
what Connor you're on about then.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, Palace like a result against City and United, it seems. They have been in good form until the weekend when they lost to Brentford. Uh, United 3 wins in 4. Do you think this is a win at Old Trafford, Ethan?
Um, I think it would be naive to suggest it's a win. I think there's no easy
I think it's
games in the Premier.
winnable.
Yeah, well, anything's winnable. Um, but I think any game in the Premier League, gone are the days where you can go, do you know what, that's an easy 3 points, particularly with Man United. Phew, there's no easy 3 points with that. There's never an easy watch with United. But I mean, Palace it's a big clash actually. They're 13th, they're just below us on 27. So if they win, they go above us.
I do
Unbelievable.
think Palace at Selhurst Park's a different prospect to at home, so I
Oh
think you
yeah.
probably got that in your favour.
Well, yeah, but United's Old Trafford record has been absolutely
Yeah.
terrible recently. So I think I honestly, I'm not going to bet against United, but I'm not going to bet for them either because it would be like it'd be stupid to go, yeah, it's not an easy game at all. I mean, we struggled against Southampton, so I think Palace will give us a good run for our money, and it will be one of those if we can get those individual moments of brilliance, we might sneak a win. Like I mean, Lisandro Martinez goal yesterday was like a moment of, well, not really brilliance, but fortune, stuff like that. If that goes in your favour, Old Trafford momentum, that sort of thing, United might win it.
As for City, as we mentioned earlier, a big week ahead. A must-win game against Club Brugge in midweek in the Champions League to have any chance of making the knockout rounds. A win would take us into the playoff positions, I believe. Um, bit See, it's a bit of a sticky one this one for City because the new signings can't feature as they're not registered. So it will just be Pep will be relying on the same players he relied upon against PSG. Um, so it could go either way. I mean, we spoke about it briefly on the group chat last week about Club Brugge, how Dan was saying that on paper, as you would say, really, it's a very winnable game for City. Club Brugge, not exactly a European giant of any sorts, but they have been in good form this season, doing very well in Belgium. And I can't remember what the stat was that I brought up in the group chat, but I think the only games they've lost since like September have been to Sporting and Villa, and in fact they beat Villa, didn't they? And they beat Sporting, so
Do you say
I
they
was
beat
going
Juve
down
as
the wrong.
well? Was it Juve?
Yeah, they've had maybe not Juve because Juve don't lose games, do they?
Yeah,
But
the
they've been in
unbeaten one.
very
Yeah.
good form this season. I'll find it now. Yeah, they drew with Juve, beat Sporting, beat Villa. They had a good season. And yeah, this won't be an easy game for City, but the fact that it's at the Etihad, the fact we're coming into it on the back of that win against Chelsea, I think City should we've got it in us to get the win there. It's just whether the players turn up and don't capitulate in the middle of the park again. But that is a whole other issue because Arsenal is next in the league. I don't really know where to stand in the league right now because, as we mentioned, there's a lot of teams doing so well in the league this season. You know, your Bournemouths, your Brentfords, etc. Newcastle, Fulham. So many teams are just there or thereabouts, middle of the park. City in a good spot right now in the league position. We've snuck into the top four on the quiet. And it's very tight around there. So within a couple of games, you can be anywhere from fourth to ninth. So it's a bit it's an odd one because there's still a long portion of the season to play. It's very competitive. Arsenal, very tough fixture, especially at the Emirates. They might not have been in the best form that they've been in, but still a very tough team to beat. And like we didn't beat them earlier in the season. That 2-2 draw where John Stones saved us. So the Arsenal game's bit of a I think like Dan was saying earlier, City could easily get a few goals, but throw it away. Because City's defense just we will concede. We will concede. That's a fact. It's just do we have the same attacking fluidity we showed against against Chelsea? Remains to be seen. Dan, how do you see this game going? Do you think it's significant for City this game? Because obviously the win against Chelsea was big. Is it now about finding that consistency if you want to
I, th-
sustain the top four position?
I think to do it against the big team, especially like Arsenal, that would be quite a huge statement. But equally, I was speaking, and you said there again as well, that if City do go up by two, they could lose the game. But then this would be the time where Pep and the City team prove that when the chips are down and they do go 2-0 down, that they can draw the game 2-all or win it 3-2. That would be a bigger, more of a statement rather than just a 1-0 win or a 1-all draw, obviously. So I think a big performance is needed in this game to put down a little statement down to say that City, they're not back, obviously, but they are still here. Like, you can't forget about them. So I think it is quite a big game, but I mean, the Club Brugge game equally, probably, if not more bigger, for the hopes in Europe at the moment, if the Premier League's out of distance at the moment. Um,
I,
so,
I think
go on.
I think it'd be you'd be ambitious to think like you'll score quite a few against Arsenal because Arsenal don't
Yeah,
concede many goals. I think
no,
it's a matter of you're gonna have to get it right at the back. And
yeah.
you're gonna like the things that you've got wrong. You're not gonna just. It's not gonna be a 4-3 game. It's gonna be one where you're gonna have to really be the player like the City of old and be at your best in every department. Because while Arsenal aren't in amazing form, they are still a very well-run team, and they will do you from a corner. So
And
yeah, they're gonna have to be really at the races.
And these City players know how to beat this Arsenal squad. That's another thing as well. These players have been in teams where they've beaten Arsenal and they've beaten them quite convincingly. So if they, with some of the newer players that are in and around the setup now, if they just bring them in a little bit and just show them what like this team or the City team can be, then Arsenal would be the perfect game to do it.
But did they believe?
That's the
Did
thing
they believe they can beat him?
that's the thing. They need to get that from somewhere.
We've not beaten Arsenal in three league meetings. We did beat them in the Community Shield last year. That's four games without a win over Arsenal. I make that. Um, so it's far from a given. And I think if City were going into this with Ruben Diaz at the back, it's one thing not having Rodri, but we're used to that by now. If we had Ruben Diaz at the back, there'd be a bit more confidence
Is
because
he injured
we,
again?
yeah,
Oh boy.
injured again, brought off at half time against Ipswich. Was it half time? Maybe he did the full game. But it's because we keep rushing players back because the defense has been so weak that whenever someone comes back, you're like, right, okay, get straight in. That's why he started Kusanov at the weekend because even though people have been saying like, how does Pep think this 20-year-old kid who's got 30 league one appearances, who doesn't speak the language, if he thinks he's ready, but not someone like James McAtee who's had a few seasons playing regularly in England at a good level, or Nico O'Reilly, who's played a bit and had good first team experience, if they're not ready, that's why you threw Kusanov in because the defense needed the fresh legs. Nathan Ake is still out. John Stones was available at the weekend, but again, didn't want to rush him back. Maybe he's learned from his mistakes. That's why Kusanov started. So Akanji's not been at it this season really. So City just need to shore up against Arsenal, and I think Ethan's right there. We just need to hold it together a bit, and like we did against Chelsea, let the whole team play for each other. Bernardo dropping deep, covering the hard yards as he likes to do. We'll need another big performance from Mateus Nunes in his makeshift right back role, where I think he's actually done quite well recently. PSG didn't cover himself in glory, but none of the team did really. It was just a bit embarrassing. But against Chelsea, he was really impressive, as was Josko Gvardiol, who's took a turn from having quite a poor season to uh, impressing lately. So and he does turn up in the big games. He tends to. So I think he could be that weapon again with those runs in behind. And if Edison's long balls do get used, then maybe Erling Haaland will have a bit more joy. But yeah, like you say,
But
the Arsenal defense is quite physical. They're definitely a defense to contend with Haaland. It's just whether we stay humble.
the transfers, what have you made of them? Obviously, Kusanov and Marmoush have already played, but even before that, when City were linked with them, now they've brought them in. Marmoush, Kusanov, Reyes, or am I pronouncing it wrong? It might be
Rice,
Rice.
not
Um,
Declan.
what have you thought of those players being brought in? Because I was going to say, and I mentioned it before, City still haven't addressed that right back spot, and Nunes, like you say, is having to make a makeshift role there, which is a little bit worrying.
Yeah, I don't think right back's at the top of the list of concerns right now because we can kind of get around it. Took a step out of the team for now, which is probably best for him right now. Uh, but I think once we get more availability from the rest of the defenders centrally, then Akanji can go back to playing a more wider role like he did in the Champions League final. That's where he tended to shine best in the wider areas. So I don't think right back's something we'll address this window. We seem to have brought in Juma Bar from Real Valladolid before loaning him out to Lyon in France as part of a little Kusanov trade. But obviously that has no bearing on the first team right now. But it shows that we are looking to bolster that defence going forward because it's aging and rather unreliable it seems at the moment. But I think midfielder is probably a position. Well, it seems rather obvious to say now, a bit of a uh, needless to say, really midfield needs addressing because that's been our sticking point in this season. But that'll just take the reliance off Gundogan and Kovacic because for players who are 31, 33, 34, they shouldn't be playing as much as they have been, and that's why we've been getting overrun a lot and why we've been so susceptible to the transitions. But I think fresh blood in any form when you're having such a tough run of things is always helpful because it's just new hunger, new freshness, new fresh legs, new talent. I think it helps everyone out really. Bit of a fresh vibe about the club, especially when they're young and on the upward trajectories of their career. That's the kind of player that matches the club's ambitions because we want to be continuing on an upward trajectory. So the minute we have a bit of a plateau or a decrease in form, then these players can be coming to help us out and pick us up a bit. And I think Marmoush, like I mentioned, was really impressive. He's got a lot of ability it seems on the ball technically, and I think his ability to operate in a few positions will be a big asset for the rest of the season because City's, like I say, with the injuries, we've Haaland's not been able to have a break much. Mamouche can play up front if needs be. He can be a bit more productive on the wings than the likes of Grealish have been in recent years. Savio's been good. He's been unfortunate to drop out last couple of games, so I expect to see him against Club Brugge. But yeah, the new defenders, like I say, it's just for those legs because this defense has not been reliable this season. Both young, can't be relying on them too much because they're quite inexperienced, especially at such a high level that we want to be playing at. So it's I'm not expecting fireworks from them. I don't think they'll be in the starting lineup next season, if you will, because unless they really impress. But I think it's more of a long-term signing. But like I say, I think it just helps us out right now, and that's what we need to try and ride out this tough run and change the fortunes, which seems to have worked so far. But that's literally just one game, so a long way to go. On these next few games, Liverpool, Newcastle, Arsenal, going to be the real test of mentality, test of the squad to see where we're at going into the rest of the season because Champions League is the most important in terms of getting in the top four position. We can't be losing out on that money. For my money, I'm not bothered about Club Brugge. It's an extra two games if we beat them. for the Champions League playoff. So, because I don't think we have any chance of winning that this season. So, I'd rather just get top four secured. So, it's an interesting position to be in. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we fare in these next few weeks. Well, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to leave us a rating and review on Spotify. Check us out on social media, TikTok, X, and Instagram at Tears Apart Pod. And catch us next week, or even later this week, as we have an exclusive interview with Lee Martin, former Manchester United defender. Keep your eyes out for that. Thanks for listening. Take care. See you next time.